Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. I'm with Professor M D Nalapat today, and we're going to be discussing the ongoing saga about the United States double standards when it comes to treating some people with questionable background, with their links to radical elements, with their links to acts of terrorism in the past, and yet they seem to think that these are okay. So we're going to talk about that. Most importantly, first, please like this video, and if you have not subscribed to our channel, do subscribe to our channel. Let's welcome Professor M D Nalapat. Professor Nalapat, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Thank you, Sree. I'm glad to be back.
Professor Nalapat, the US double standards, when we look at this ongoing saga of 𝗤𝗚𝘂𝘆 𝗔𝘂𝘆, how he has been allowed a fairly free hand to mouth whatever he wants to, whether it is at Indian Canadians or at the diplomats of Indian embassy. Somehow this all being justified when we put people on the mat and ask the question, because these are the representatives of the United States government. We ask them, this is not really freedom of speech, because this rhetoric has gone up significantly in the recent past. As we go along in this conversation, I'll tell you some examples. But this is what we keep hearing from the United States government. No arrest for the consulate, Indian consulate being set on fire on July 2nd. Still nothing has happened there. And so I can go on and on. Professor Nalapat, your article today in Sunday Guardian was a real eye-opener. You have pulled no punches and you have shown the things the way they are. The most important thing that I came to know from reading your article is what is happening with this so-called person who was ordering the hit job on Pannu, Nikhil Gupta. Talk to us a little bit about what has been happening. Has the Czech Republic handed him over to the United States? If not, what is stopping them? Where are things there?
Look, Sree, I would like to begin basically by asking, let's say that in India, you had an individual who was essentially facilitating terror groups in the United States, who was openly propagating on social media and in telephone conversations and in public speeches the need for terror operations against the United States, basically who are propagating that a particular religious denomination, let's say Catholics, for example, they are horrible and they need to be dealt with in ways that I'm not going to talk about. Let's say all that was going on and, the Indian government did nothing about it. This gentleman was allowed to travel out of India across the whole world, and of course he would have been a citizen of India, and he was openly propagating terror, violence, extremism, and hate against the United States of America publicly, and more importantly, receiving people from the United States who are indulging in acts of terror and extremism, giving them facilitation, giving them help, and then when they go back, many of them commit atrocious acts of violence. Many of them commit atrocious acts which are frankly very destabilizing to society. And this person, let's say, he says the United States should be broken up. It's not a country. It's ridiculous. Break it up. And openly propagates the breakup of the United States. Openly, and this is can be very clearly proved, provides access to funding for such groups in the United States, provides access to logistical help for those who are planning acts of terror in the United States. If all this is going on and you have an Indian national who's doing all this in India and traveling abroad the world and of course talking about it, and of course not the United States, obviously, but those parts of the world where China, for example, or Iran or Russia now, let's put it that way, or Sudan or places like that. Now tell me, what would be the reaction of the Biden administration if the Indian government not only ignores this kind of thing, but actually champions this cause and becomes a champion of this individual, such that, rather than, upset this individual, the government of India is willing to upset relations with the United States. Now, does this make sense? Is this rational? We are a big democracy. You are a big democracy. Is this rational? And this is what I mean. It's completely rational, and yet this is exactly what's happening, except in reverse. It's the United States that's harboring this kind of individual. And you mentioned one particular name. There are dozens of such names. There are, in fact, hundreds of such names, if I may say so. And the records are clear. I mean, any college student who has got basically knowledge of the internet and knowledge of cyber science, I'm sure you can access the mails he sends. You can access his conversations, and you can see how he is facilitating terror networks. And yet, this gentleman is given the protection of almost like Secret Service protection in the United States. Now, if this is not, you will not tolerate this happening in India, and correctly so. Now, you expect us to not only tolerate it, but to keep silent about it and do nothing about it, not even raise a demand that something should be done. I mean, this is absurd. And if I may say so, Sree, I mean, the narrative has really multiplied since Ukraine. Frankly, the narrative is, let me be somebody who, in my opinion, frankly, I don't see differences between different races. Whether you're white, black, blue, brown, or whatever, you're the same. You're a human being, and we're all equal. Unfortunately, the perception is that people of a particular complexion, people who have not had much access to the sun, shall we say, people who are fair. I'm not going to use the word fair and lovely. You have several people who are not fair who are very lovely. So I think it's wrong to use the word fair and lovely. It's absolutely ridiculous. But there is a perception that this current administration of Joe Biden just cares for Europe and Europeans. And frankly, is fixated on Russia. Joe Biden as a senator was fixated on Russia. That was an old Cold War. But today, it's a long way since 1991. 1991 is when the Soviet Union disintegrated. You read my book, Cold War 2.0, Illusion versus Reality. I mean, I've given it to several friends who are American. They read it. It's available in America. I would encourage Americans to view it. And some American told me, oh, this is a very interesting Indian point of view. What are we talking about an Indian point of view? We are talking about a situation in which you have a predatory power, a power that has taken control of the entire South China Sea, a power that has nibbled territory belonging to major democratic countries, and you're doing nothing about it. Where is this great talk of sovereignty when it comes to the activities of the predatory power? Why are you silent about that? I'm sorry, Sree, please go ahead.
Professor Nalapat, I've had similar comments from Indian Americans, most likely born in India or some of them born in the United States, but who claim themselves to be Hindus. When I point out to them that Hindu and Hindutva are one and the same, then they say the same thing. That may be your perspective. That may be the Indian perspective. I mean, people, some of these things are so ingrained that they are right and that there is no other side to this. There is no other perspective to this, that, you can go blue in the face trying to explain to them that they are wrong. But I just thought I should mention this. Back to our topic here, Professor Nalapat. Go ahead.
No, Sree, I want to say that, whether Hindutva, Hindutva, Sanatan Dharma, these are philosophical concepts. And we can discuss that. They're theological concepts. They are based on ancient traditions. We can discuss that for a long time. I am talking of facts on the ground. I am talking of funding and facilitation of terror networks. I am talking of individuals who have killed individuals, innocent people, killed them in the dozens and the hundreds. I am talking of these facts on the ground. We are not talking philosophy here. We are talking reality. And that is the difference. We can argue about philosophy. Now, these people that you talk to, look, there are many people who say that the way Hindutva has been interpreted, there are many people who may say that this is different from Sanatan Dharma. There are people who say that. I'm not going to get into a doctrinal dispute. I am a Sanatani. I've always called myself a Sanatani. At the same time, I am very, very clear that a Sanatani accepts any other individual who also accepts the right of every other individual to follow his or her own path to what a divinity is, without basically demeaning that path or trying to impose religious supremacy. But these are factual situations. These are, and when you talk about terror, some long time ago, you remember, before 9/11, the United States, they were in denial about Wahhabi terror. Complete denial. It didn't exist. And after 9/11, a little bit more has come. But this is deniability to an astonishing degree, and to the degree that frankly meets the definition of a double standard. Now, as a consequence, now we have this Cold War 2.0. Unfortunately, if you remember on Ukraine, I was clear from the beginning itself, the Ukrainians have no choice but to agree to a deal in which whatever they've lost, and live peacefully ever after. They're not going to defeat Russia. Today you're seeing Ukraine is a wreck. It's a mess. And that's what's happening. But the reality of the situation is, it's Cold War 2.0, Sree. It's the PRC that is the problem. It's not Russia. Russian economy is less than 10% of the Chinese economy. Less than 10%. Where is Russia grabbing American jobs? Where is Russia, for example, indulging in gray zone warfare? Where is Russia engaging in hybrid warfare, including in the use of networks? Whether it's Pakistan, whether it is some other networks in the Middle East, whether it's networks in Southeast Asia, networks in Myanmar. Look, the reality of the situation is, the big problem is not in the Atlantic anymore. It's in the Indo-Pacific. The big problem is not Russia, it's China. And frankly, what is happening now, the global South is completely losing, forget confidence. After the withdrawal from Afghanistan, that confidence was badly shaken. Let's be honest. After Donald Trump basically suddenly threw the Kurds under the bus, after they had basically done such a great job in vanquishing ISIS, that confidence was in bad shape. But it's also a question of respect. Nobody respects the West anymore. Why? Because you respect somebody who respects you. If somebody treats you with contempt, like for example, you have the German foreign minister lecturing people in Asia, Africa, Latin America. Oh, we should do this. We should do that. We are talking of universal values. The Chinese and the American establishment, I'll tell you, they are the same in one respect. Universal values apply to everybody else. They're defined by values that you find convenient, and no value applies to you if you decide so. I'm afraid the Chinese have taken 100% the American handbook. The difference is, Sree, the age of the British Empire is over. Although the Brits still seem to believe that, they still preach a lot. The age of Pax Americana is over. But Joe Biden doesn't seem to have got that memo. He's lost in his dream in the days when he was a senator. Today there's an effort to create a Pax CCP. I'm not going to say Sinica, because the Chinese people are different from the communists, and the communist leadership is different from the ordinary communists. But in this effort, India and the United States have to work together. And you ignore India's security concerns. You basically protect individuals who are openly facilitating acts of terror against India. You lecture India about that. Justin Trudeau, I can understand. Justin Trudeau and his father have long been CCP. Well, let me put it this way, friends of the CCP. I'm not going to use stronger language. With the result, the Canadian government today, I would say that the CCP's influence in the Canadian government is very significant. But if the same thing happens in the United States, and India and the United States are essential partners in Cold War 2.0, if you treat India and Indian security interests in this manner, and you are harming this partnership, whom are you helping? You're helping Russia, of course. Russians will be delighted to see India and the United States fight each other. Let's be honest, especially after what we have seen after the Ukraine war and all these sanctions. But above all, you are pleasing Xi Jinping and the CCP. Now the question is, why are rational, logical people ignoring the evidence in front of them? I can't believe the FBI. I can't believe that other agencies in the United States, they don't have access. NSA don't have access to the kind of access that any teenage hacker can have access to, where the individuals who are being de facto protected by the Biden administration, they're protectees of the Biden administration. They are functioning. I mean, if a teenage student can get access, and I know some teenagers who are pretty good at getting access to all kinds of internet sites. Now, I mean, surely the NSA can. Why are you doing this? It's beyond me. I'm not going to go to a conspiracy theory that the people are in the pocket of China, people have been paid off, you're all Xi Jinping's puppets. No, I'm not going to buy that theory. Like I never bought the theory about Trump being Russian puppet. It's ridiculous. Saying Biden is a Chinese puppet, it may be equally ridiculous. But I cannot understand, I cannot fathom how the United States does not realize that this double standard is basically leading the country to ridicule in the global south and complete, if I may say so, perception that all the United States cares about is Europe, and the only country it's afraid of is China.
Well, there is the additional part to that story, wherein there is a leaked memo from the committee that was investigating the role of RAW in this assassination attempt through this individual called Nikhil Gupta. And it said something to the effect that one RAW agent had gone rogue. Professor Nalapat, my experience of Indian bureaucracy is, if you give them the lines within which to function, they function so far inside that they might even give a 1 kilometer buffer zone in every direction. For somebody to say that one agent went rogue, I have a little bit of difficulty in believing that. I mean, taking it with a pound of salt. So why is this new admission? Is this now the Indian government has neither denied it nor accepted it that there may have been a rogue RAW official. What exactly is going on? Is this leak intended to make it look like US has a strong case?
Look, frankly, Sree, our bureaucracy is millions of people. And if you're going to tell me that, for example, the boundary is very clear, you should not take a bribe. I would say about 1 in 10 officials do take bribes. They've crossed the boundaries. Some of them outlandishly cross the boundaries, and they've minted money for themselves and their families. They send their families to Singapore and to settle down in other locations in the United States, many of them. London is a favorite destination. And then through mysterious means, money gets transferred to accounts there. And finally, the officials themselves spend a happy retirement there, maybe even become citizens. So let's be honest. The possibility that an official may go off the reservation is definitely there. There's no question about it. It can happen. To say that every single official follows the track that has been set for him or her, I think that would be, in a bureaucracy that runs into several million, in your case, in our case, I think that would be a little bit not accurate. But I would just want to make a point. Let's say hypothetically, I mean, I don't know about this. I've seen newspaper reports about this so-called rogue agent. I don't know who has released these reports and whether these reports are genuine or not. And frankly, I mean, I like raw fruit. I sometimes also take raw vegetables. I don't know what other raw stuff that we are talking about, but I would only like to say very, very clearly, look, the United States has very openly indulged in dealing with individuals who have posed a security threat to the United States. These individuals have been dealt with, if I may say so. Several of them have been renditioned, that is, forcibly extracted from a country and sent to a place where they're going to suffer torture. For example, Julian Assange. All Assange did was reveal the fact that there were multiple, cases in which the US soldiers committed, for whatever reason, all kinds of horrible actions against civilians. Look, Iraq, those of us who have been to Iraq during that time, but there was no, I mean, there was, entering, exiting, there was nothing. The fact is, Iraqis are by temperament slightly, they get angry very quickly. And American soldiers obviously are a bit jittery. So whenever an Iraqi just talk in a loud voice, even not angry, shot. Immediately is shot, machine gunned on the spot. How many tens of thousands of innocent Iraqis were shot? I mean, I'm talking of it on a monthly basis. It's huge. The total is huge. But what are we going to do about it? You know, so are we going to, I mean, I don't know how many people in the United States have been punished for the huge collateral damage that's been caused in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in so many other theaters of war. These things have been done. But my point is very simple. The United States goes ahead with rendition. The United States goes ahead with neutralizing individuals who are plainly a security threat. Are you telling me that just because you're the United States, and by the way, your population is way below ours, if I may say so, and we are well on the way to becoming third economy, and one day we'll overtake you, the rights that you have appropriated, we don't have? You know, I've seen I've studied what happened in Germany. You have this concept of the Herrenvolk, the master race. You have the Untermensch, the subordinate, the slave races. So, in effect, what you're saying, you are the master race. You can do what you like. But you Indians are Untermensch, the slave race. You can't do anything. You can't do what we do. I'm sorry, Sree. If the United States does something, and I do believe the United States is acting in its own interest, and in the acting is the good of humanity when it goes after terrorists wherever they are, and if the local governments are not facilitating that, the United States takes action, I would say good for them. The same way, the same right we have in India. So let's say hypothetically that a situation was organized. As I said, I don't believe that there was any such thing at all. As you correctly said, the Indian bureaucracy is nothing if not cautious. I don't believe this ever happened. But assuming it happened, it is basically something that you guys have done hundreds and thousands of times before. Are we children of a lesser God? Are we inferior to you? Are we Untermensch? Are you saying that you are Herrenvolk and you are entitled to something that we are not entitled to? I'm sorry, Sree. I don't accept that. Whatever you do in your own self-defense, we are entitled to in our own self-defense. And frankly, hearing these officials on record, off record, mouthing all kinds of, frankly, racist kind of language. And they mouth it whether they are from ethnic origin of Europe, ethnic origin of Asia, wherever. They mouth essentially racist language. Oh, we are different people. Europeans are different people. You guys shouldn't be like that. You're in the global south. Who the hell are you? A bunch of people with snake charmers. I mean, what's your per capita income? So that is rubbish, Sree. I'm sorry. Let me be told, the Chinese have followed the bad example of the United States. If some country decided to follow some of the good examples of the United States, well, the United States has itself to talk about, to point to, by setting that example. And I'd like to say, I don't accept any status for India lower than the status the United States sets for itself. Any standard, any status.
Professor Nalapat just gave a hint of two individuals. Those of you who are watching carefully can pick up the names. Without saying the names, he has described the two individuals. Professor Nalapat, where do we go from here? Because there is, about China. If China says we're going to attack Taiwan, we're going to attack Taiwan, that really means that they're going to attack anybody but Taiwan, because that's how you try to fool. Also, the PLA's newspaper says that, oh, we are not ready for a war. That means they are really ready for a war. These are all, trying to create some sort of a mask so that people get into a little bit of complacency mode. Where do things go from here? Do you expect China to commit some acts of misadventure along the porous LAC, ill-defined LAC of 3,400 kilometers before the elections?
Look, I don't see that happening, quite frankly, because our soldiers have shown their mettle. Uh, there is a very heavy deployment of troops. The Indian Navy is there, and frankly, we can choke their commerce. They cannot choke our commerce. There's no question about it. So I frankly do not see it happening. I would disagree with you that there is no possibility of an attack on Taiwan. In my view, the possibility is very real, and it could come before 2027. The reason is Xi Jinping desperately needs a win. Now, tell me, Sree, if there's an attack on Taiwan, is your country in any position to defend itself? Is the UK, Germany, France in any position to defend themselves, to go after China, to go after the PLA, without, if I may say so, the support of a country like India, where we have something like 48 million, between 41 and 48 million young people who can be trained in warfare in a matter of months. You know, the forgotten people. I gave a tweet today about the forgotten soldiers, the forgotten people. And the forgotten people are the Indian soldiers of World War I and II. More than 2-3 million. Who talks about them? Americans talk about them. British talk about them. French talk about them. Well, I mean, in Second World War, France was an occupied country. We have heard great stories about the resistance. But it was not the resistance that overthrew the Nazis. It was the fact that the back of the Wehrmacht was broken by the Russians, and then the Americans in 1944 middle, when the Russians already broken the back of the Wehrmacht, they came in at that point in time. 2 million Indians, 2.5 million, 3 million, they're the forgotten people who have been there. So my point is, let's be honest. Ukraine has shown you are in no condition to fight a war even against Russia. And may I say one very disconcerting fact, this terror attack on Moscow. Of course, a huge cacophony has come. It's ISIL, ISIS. Look, there are so many, there are so many modules, so many franchises which go by the ISIS name. They're more common than a McDonald's franchise, frankly. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry is now calling himself or herself an ISIL operative. Many of them are mercenary. They're what's called rent-a-terrorist. You can call it that way. So quite frankly, there is no such organization functioning called ISIS or ISIL in a manner which is a coherent manner. This particular operation, frankly, God forbid, if it is part of grey zone warfare on the part of any country, if it is part of hybrid warfare on the part of any country, well, Vladimir Putin is not a very forgiving man. You've seen that happen. Mr. Putin, you saw him in 2014. You saw him in Georgia. You saw him in 𝗒𝘅𝗏𝗄𝗏. You saw him in various others. The only time when he buckled was basically under Chinese pressure when he allowed Armenia to be defeated. And then a false narrative came. Individuals who I'm sure they've got that, it's Indian weapons that caused our defeat. Rubbish. That's absolute rubbish. What caused the fact was that Putin had to keep away because the Chinese told him to keep away. They wanted to please the Azerbaijanis. So that's what happened. But I'd like to say, it's what happened. Now, today, I find a Russian missile, a Kinzhal, has gone into Polish territory and entered Ukraine. Now tell me, what are you going to do about it? Let's say Putin sends 1,000 missiles into Polish territory, into German territory, French territory. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to launch a land war against Russia? You've already sanctioned it and sanctioned it and sanctioned it. Well, what more sanction will you give him? Nothing. You've already gone the mile, the whole mile. So let's assume that he does that. What are you going to do? So today, Poland is now, a Russian Kinzhal has gone into Poland. This is a wake-up call, I can tell you very clearly. I don't believe that this has happened by accident. These missiles are very precisely targeted. So the reality is, Putin is sending a signal, he's had enough. There's something I've been warning about for quite some time. For God's sake, do what Narendra Modi wants, stop this damn war now. And because, let me be honest with you, the United States is in no condition to fight a land war with Russia. NATO is in no condition to fight a land war with Russia. And the escalation dominance will be with Russia. And if they launch tactical nuclear weapons on a non-nuclear country, can you think of France, United States, and the UK launching nuclear missiles against Russia and having London, New York, and Paris bombed by Russian nuclear strikes? Of course not. Definitely not. This Article 5 itself is ridiculous. The more people you have, the less believable it is. Now, my worry is Putin has been this terror attack. You're pushing Putin to the limit of his patience. And after some time, something is going to happen. Something is going to snap. Wars don't start in the way you want it to start. They escalate and they escalate. Hitler never believed that he'd face a major war with Western Europe when France and Britain would declare war. Of course, they declared war and did nothing after that. He didn't believe it. The First World War, again, it was based on misunderstanding. So this Third World War can also be based on misunderstanding. The reality of the situation is, if Putin, misunderstands something, well, he could launch something. And then what happens? You're locked in a European war. And the Chinese can then walk into Taiwan anytime they want. As it is, in my view, you're in very little condition to do very much about it, if they really move seriously into it. And many Taiwanese now agree with that. You're shown that your military, especially the army, you're saying Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, failures everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Against ragtag bands of people. Against the Taliban, for God's sake. And, I saw somebody on television saying, Donald Trump threw a mother of all bombs on ISIS. He threw the mother of all bombs in some place, and God knows how many Afghan people died in that. But he is the one who signed the surrender document, which Biden implemented. So please, Sree, let's be honest. Be realistic. The Chinese want Taiwan. The CCP wants Taiwan. Xi wants Taiwan. He has publicly said he'll get Taiwan during his term in office. He probably means this term. So please don't, imagine that there is no threat to Taiwan. As far as India is concerned, we'll take care of ourselves. I would very much like the United States to provide India with the kind of weapons that they're providing in Ukraine, logistic support, air support, we welcome that. Navy, let's say, for example, we choke Chinese commerce right from the Red Sea, Malacca Strait, to the Malacca Straits. We can easily do that. I'd like the Quad to become hyperactive. I'd like all that to happen. But tell me, Sree, tell me honestly, will Putin be scared of a reaction? He sent a 𝗤𝙑𝙤 missile into Poland. Poland is now screaming, oh, what's happening? What's happening? In 1939, 1938, 1937, 1936, guess which country publicly said, we do not want the French and British and the Russians to come together. We are opposed to it. Guess, a guy called, a Polish chap, the then foreign minister of Poland, multiple statements he made on that ground. It was Poland who basically ensured that the Soviet Union and France and Britain, which could have demolished Germany, right from 1935-36, Maxim Litvinov was arguing for that. It's only in 1939, or I would say, I'm sorry, even in end of 39, by 39, that Stalin realized it's not going to happen. So he turned to Hitler. But the same Poland has been very vociferous. The same Baltic countries very vociferous. For God's sake, if you have an invasion, what are you going to do about it? And do you think that France, Britain, and the United States are going to lob a nuclear missile on Russia, which is armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons? Of course not. Let's be realistic, Sree. So what I'm saying is, the relationship with India is too important for the United States to basically put into jeopardy on matters which are frankly trifling compared to the immense reality of the danger that we are facing. And the way this kind of a fuss is being made over it it creates memories of Herrenvolk and Untermensch. We have been treated as Untermensch. And the people and the Western world regard themselves as Herrenvolk. That's rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Today, whether it's the metrics of economics, whether it's the metrics of security, in every way, Asia is going back to its natural state of being the #1 continent in the world. So for God's sake, Sree, this is ridiculous. I don't know why the Biden administration is acting in this manner. I don't know why the Germans are acting in this manner, why the British and the French are acting in this manner. Ultimately, they're going to suffer the way, very frankly, the Polish people suffered in the Second World War. And it was their own government. I think his name was Beck or something, a foreign minister, if I remember. And, they suffered horribly for their own, short-sightedness. So the basic question is, okay, you don't like India. A lot of people in the conservative didn't like Soviet Union, so they preferred Germany, frankly. Right up to 1939, 90% of the conservative leadership wanted to desperate for an alliance with Germany against Stalin. But the fact is, Hitler was the biggest threat. And to fight Hitler, you needed to work with Stalin. Roosevelt, fortunately, was a smart American president. He realized it. And that happened. Today, I'm telling you, it is unavoidable for you to have an alliance with India. Don't fool around with that alliance. Don't try and upset Indian public opinion, because if you put too much pressure, Indian public opinion will turn against the United States, and then the government is going to be finding it very difficult to act. Narendra Modi has revitalized the Quad along with Shinzo Abe. Narendra Modi has signed the 3+1 foundational agreements with the United States. Narendra Modi has multiplied defense training with the United States to a point where the training with India is more than training with practically any other country where the United States is concerned. He has done all that. Why are you basically trying to belittle him? On whose behalf? On whose behalf are you doing it? On whose behalf are you playing politics? Then you admit it straight out. We are playing politics. We want a particular party, a bunch of parties to come whom we can be the real Herrenvolk. We don't want a prime minister who believes India is equal to any other country and who doesn't treat anybody as a Herrenvolk and India as an Untermensch. Admit it. But the fact is, you better treat us better for a simple reason: your own survival as a democracy, your own survival of as maintaining global security depends on it.
Thank you so much, Professor Nalapat. I think we have a few questions for you, sir. If you don't mind, can we have those questions answered?
Sure.
First question, please. Shivanandan wants to know, my question is, will India-US relation become strong again when Trump and Modi come to leadership again?
Look, I'd like to say about Donald Trump, he's the guy who kicked the Kurds under the bus and basically kissed Erdogan on both cheeks and handed over a slice of territory which was controlled by the Kurds in Syria to Erdogan and Turkey. And that slice of territory is the only place where ISIS and Al-Qaeda are functioning. No other part of Syria. He's the guy who basically made Mike Pompeo sign a surrender document with the Taliban. Let's not talk about Donald Trump's problem is, for him, everything is in dollars and cents. And that is something which, frankly, that's not how the world works. It doesn't work on that basis. So Donald Trump is mercurial. Donald Trump is very, if I may say so, dollar cent oriented. Donald Trump is too Donald Trump. We can't say. I'm only talking of fundamental interests. But if he chooses a smart team of people, and I'd like to say, for example, if 𝗒𝙗𝘄 𝗍𝗏𝗏, for example, were made his vice presidential candidate, I would say terrific. If he has a good national security team, if he has got a good, a bunch of people in the Pentagon, defense secretary, a commerce secretary, secretary of state, well, he could do a great job. It all depends on the individuals whom he selects. And hopefully, if he selects the right people, he will do a great job. As far as Prime Minister Modi is concerned, he's got a proven track record. He has worked very hard from day one to build a strong relationship with the very country that denied him a visa under 2 administrations. He forgot all that in 24 seconds. He's got that track record. And believe me, a third term of Narendra Modi can be transformational for the India-US relationship in a way that will preserve the sanctity of the Indo-Pacific and also protect countries like Taiwan that are under threat.
Thank you, sir. Next question, please. Abhiram wants to know, why don't India say to Canada PM that you didn't prove anything, go to your parliament, apologize to India?
Look, frankly, when, what is one to say about Justin Trudeau, tell me? If you take him seriously, you'll have problems of blood pressure. You have to take him for what he is, a clown. And a clown who, from his father's time onwards, has been very friendly to China. Let me put it that way. The links of the Trudeau family to China are many and varied. It's very obvious. So the Canadian people have chosen him as the Prime Minister. He has made it almost a priority to try and wreck relations between the West and India. And I'm sorry to say, to a considerable extent, thanks to, the Sino Wahabi Lobby, thanks to people who still believe in Western, exceptionalism and the Atlantic Alliance still being the masters of the world and everybody else being subsidiary, well, he has succeeded to some extent. The reality is, Justin Trudeau is just a symptom of a broader problem. And that broader problem is many people, and there I blame the media. Whether it's online media or print media, you're peddling a narrative that Russia, Putin. You're giving the real threat a free pass. So the Americans don't know what the threat is. That balloon that flew over the United States was a Russian balloon. The country that's threatening Taiwan is a country that is nibbling at the territory of so many democracies. The country that is basically challenging you by supporting Hamas in the Security Council openly, and not Israel. That country, you're basically giving it a free pass with your obsession with something that is over. Sree, Russia is yesterday's enemy, not today's. And if you focus on yesterday's war, and if you're a soldier and you use tactics of yesterday's war, you saw what happened to the French in the Second World War. They folded up in a matter of weeks. The Germans were at the gate of Paris. They had all the champagne they wanted, everything, all the good times they wanted in a matter of weeks. So please, don't fight the last war. This is a new war. It's Cold War 2.0. Forget about Cold War 1.0. It's gone. It's Cold War 2.0. And for God's sake, don't, the lobbies that are working to prevent the American people from understanding this truth, I would like to say many people, especially the Republican Party, understand that truth. Certainly, 𝗒𝙁𝙁 𝗍𝙗𝗏 understands it. I'm sorry, Nikki Haley does not. But many people do understand it. As far as Donald Trump is concerned, he'll be as good as his team, quite frankly. And I think he's learned a terrible lesson, all these prosecutions. I hope he'll be more careful if he comes next time around. But of course, there's a long way before November.
Next question, please. 𝗤𝙧𝙤𝙀 wants to know, Russia has been bombing ISIS in Syria since 2015. The Moscow mall attack appears to be a very delayed response. Your thoughts on possibility of covert Pak ISI CIA role in this terror incident?
Look, from all the data I've seen, the same groups that organized the sabotage of Nord Stream 2 organized this particular attack. They went with military precision, and they very conveniently, there was body cam video footage was aired with the ISIS label. It's first of all is Daesh or ISIL, except an amateur, maybe some bureaucrat in some government department. Nobody says ISIS. I mean, maybe some spin doctor, poor fellow who has not studied terror groups, will talk about it's ISIL or Daesh, frankly. And it's now an ISI in Khorasan is very different. But, ISPK, Pakistan, Khorasan, but Afghanistan, Khorasan. But the whole Khorasan theory is to take hold of a lot of territory, mostly in South Asia. But from that point of view, I'd like to say, why would an Islamist group target Russia? Russia is supporting Hamas. Hamas is a terror organization. I mean, one can argue that Russia is supporting Hamas because they have been forced to go on the defensive by the West. Yes, The Chinese are supporting Hamas. The Russians supporting Hamas. They're supporting a terror group, Hamas, in the UN Security Council. They're defending Hamas. They're going after Israel. Why would a real Wahhabi group attack a country that is going, in their favor in the Security Council? I don't understand. It doesn't make sense, frankly. I have a feeling that we are going to get the dots very soon. I have a feeling that this is going to be taken up in the UN Security Council. If the Russians find out, they're going to take it up. And in the meantime, of course, all these, body cam, etc. But that was conducted by with military precision. It was a terror attack conducted by military precision. Like I said, that October 7 attack was conducted with military intelligence. This was conducted with military precision. And I can assure you that the disparate modules and groups that form, ISIL and Daesh, they don't have that kind of precision.
Thank you, sir. Last question. Is US playing into the hands of Sino Wahabi Lobby in the United States? Sachin Sharma wants to know.
Well, Sachin, I repeat, I wrote a book which came out in August 22 about 75 years of foreign policy. I argued for a very strong India-US relationship. I wrote then Cold War 2.0, which came out in September last year. Both are doing fairly well. Cold War 2.0 is doing pretty well, and it's there all over the US. It's essential, frankly, that India and the United States come together. The Sino Wahabi Lobby, it is toxic to Sino Wahabi Lobby. You remember, Sree, we have discussed about how, bots are functioning, how internet talk shows are being manipulated to create a strong fringe at the expense of to create a hate. For example, this entire Hindu terror hate. Now, by a stroke of luck, Kasab was caught. If he were not caught, I can tell you very clearly, at that point in time, the Home Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, he was going, and the entire Manmohan Singh, Hindu terror, Hindu terror, Hindu terror. 10 Janpad was talking about Hindu terror. They're still talking about Hindu terror, by the way. It was, oh my God, the 26/11 attack was carried out by Hindu terror. Now you're saying Putin basically made himself look like a weak president, like a president who can't maintain security of Russia. Putin did this to himself? It is absurd, to be frank with you. So let's be honest. Sachin, you're a bright guy. You know the answer, whether it's yes or no. I'm not going to repeat the answer because all I said, I want to see a strong India-US relationship. Joe Biden is going to be president of the United States until January next year. There are good people in the Biden administration, very good people. And there are some people who are very nice people, but not very smart. Let me put it that way. But I'm not going to give a yes or no answer. Sachin, if by now you haven't got the answer to that, I doubt that I'm going to be able to convince you.
Thank you so much, Professor Nalapat. A lot of things discussed, and what is going to happen next, we will wait and see. Clearly, he has given us a lead on who he thinks has orchestrated this attack in Moscow, and clearly there is a retaliation going on. So I'm afraid we are talking about another world war. We've been in this thing for a few years now. I don't know when it's going to get to the next level. Thank you once again, Professor Nalapat, and please, viewers, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.
Jai Hind. Namaskar.